We're in Charleston, South Carolina, and visiting with former Senator Fritz Hollings, and it's been since 2005 since you left the United States Senate.
That's right, January of 2005.
Yeah. How's life these days? What are you up to?
Good. I'm resting, taking it easy, but I'm riding my friends in the Senate, particularly Joe Biden, the Vice President. He and I sat together for years in the United States Senate, and I'm trying my best to get him off the dime and start paying for government. And they're just playing games up there in Washington.
I want to spend a little more time with you talking about all those issues, but let's talk about Charleston for a little bit. You made your home here for a long time. Tell me what, for people who have never visited this city, what's it all about? What makes it special?
I think the fact that they haven't gone with all the high rises and everything else, it's still a residential city in essence, and it's got all the accoutrements of being at the ocean and still river traffic and everything else of that kind. It's a big port, Charleston, so it's developed over the years, but it's still maintained as a little small residential town.
Has it fared okay during the economic downturn?
Oh yeah.
And why is that? What made it have success when other cities were hurting? Tourism.
Tourism, oh yeah. We started that program years ago when I was governor. Joe Riley's father, Joe Riley Sr., was the chairman of the tourism committee. That's all I could do was appoint committees and get it going. And North Carolina was doing Luther Hodges at the same time. And Jerry Albright I got from North Carolina, and he helped us and really put it on the map.
So even when the country was hurting, people still kept coming here?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
And right now, there's a big controversy going on nationally about the Boeing plant coming here. But you've successfully, over the years in the state, attracted big corporations. What's been the key to that?
The key to it is, of course, we've had the right to work law, but we've paid our bills. I was a young governor, only 37 when I was elected, and I knew I wasn't going to get in the door up there in New York with the government running in the red, and that's the history of South Carolina, is being in the red, not paying its bills. And so we increased taxes my first year, and I got the first AAA credit rating of any state in this entire South, and that was my calling card to get in the door. And then I was playing catch-up ball with Luther Hodges. He's had the research triangle up there in North Carolina, and he was a businessman's governor, and he led the way more or less and got them looking south. And then they looked not just at North Carolina, they could look at South Carolina.
So mutual benefit and competition between the two states.
That's right.
At the same time.
That's right.
Before I leave the subject of Charleston, one of our missions here is to try and capture, this city has long and rich history, but we're trying to capture a little bit of it for C-SPAN's viewers around the country. Do you have a favorite historical spot or two in this city?
Nope, no particular, just the entire city is my favorite. We parked along the Battery and everything else like that, the waterfront, when we were kids growing up, and we didn't have air conditioning, and that's where we got conditioned for the heat, was to go to the Battery, take the family to the Battery, and
get out of the heat and get some breezes.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we felt it this week. It's 96 degrees while we've been here these past couple days. So, so we know about your Charleston summers just by visiting. Now, it caught our attention that you have been writing a column regularly for the Huffington Post, which is like the #1 or #2 online site about politics. How'd that get started?
I don't know, but I'm glad to hear you reading it. You the first person that's ever come to me that's read the Huffington Post.
No kidding.
And I've been putting it in there for about a year. I finally had a contact in Washington that started about a year ago, and we've only been doing it for about a year. But thank heavens you read it, because it's been all to the point of paying for government. Every governor pays every year for government. Every mayor pays for the city's administration every year. We haven't paid for government in 10 years, going on almost 11 by September. George Bush signed every spending bill, and so has Barack Obama. George Bush added 5 trillion to the national debt, and Obama, if the CBO estimate is correct, by September will have spent, borrowed and spent 4.5 trillion. So that's 9.5 trillion, and we didn't pay for walls during that during that 10 or 11 years. We didn't pay for tax cuts. Now that you want to pay for the walls, you want to pay for tax cuts, you can't do it with spending cuts. You can't cut 9.5. The budget is, annual budget is only 1.2 trillion. So if you're going to pay for it with spending cuts, you got to eliminate your budget for 10 years. I mean, give me a break. But the people don't understand that. All they know is that Republicans are against taxes and the Democrats are for spending.
Well, there's so many ways I want to follow up on that, but let me just talk about the looming deadline of early August, we hear, when the debt limit has been reached and the country could possibly see default on its obligations. We are hearing that there might be some breakthroughs going on in that room, but what is it going to take, given the polarization of the parties right now, to find a consensus and a way forward? Let me ask you first, would you vote to increase the debt limit if you were in the Senate right now?
Oh, yes. I voted
That's
for it.
But it's a different time, but you would say yes right now?
It's money just about already committed to spending. I mean, you've already authorized it.
But would you do it with caveats?
No caveats. Baloney with that. Pay the blooming bill. That's your trouble. Everybody's thinking about entitlements. When August the 2nd comes, Social Security really records a 2 trillion surplus. It doesn't go broke, according to the CBO, until 2036. Borrow some more money from Social Security. The August 2nd date, once the president moved it, and it was supposed to be the 1st of May or something like that, and then they moved it to August the 2nd, they realized they were playing games, and nobody is serious about paying for government, because the people don't understand it's paying for government. They think it's a technical thing and you've got to have growth. And all. You ever heard of a mayor talking about growth? You ever heard of a governor talking about growth? They're talking about paying their bills.
So this debt ceiling debate, which has got the two parties, people walking out of the Gang of Six negotiations, people walking out of the Biden talks, what is the atmosphere in Congress and at the White House right now that people can't find compromise?
Nothing gets done. The atmosphere is the game. The game is re-election, and you got to get the money for re-election. In other words, in '98, 12 years ago, I had to spend $8.5 trillion, million to 8.5 million. Now, 8.5 million is 30,000 a week, each week, every week for 6 years. It's not just raising money the year ahead. It's raising it for all 6 years, and you're raising it not only for yourself, because your colleagues will help you, the committees will want to keep that seat, and so when your time is up. So you always out there raising money, and the name of the game is make no mistake, play defense when you get back to Washington. They got no idea of paying the bill. They haven't paid the bill for 10 years.
So the root cause of the problem?
Root cause is money.
Money.
Yeah, we've got to excise that cancer, and the Supreme Court has just handed down another loony decision. They found out that the corporations could give money, but the states couldn't give money.
It's like the Arizona campaign finance.
Yeah, Arizona case, and George Will has got an editorial this morning on it. Spending is not speech. That fella, the homeless below the bridge, he doesn't have any money. He can't spend, but he's got all the speech in the world. Spending is not speech, but George Will and the Republicans go along with spending is speech. Spending is speech. In 1973, I voted along with everybody else to limit spending. In other words, under Nixon, and everything. It looked like the government was up for sale, and we didn't want the rich to buy the seat. I can hear John McClellan turning to Fulbright and saying, we don't want a Jack Kennedy buying this seat down in Arkansas, and everything like that. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court disregarded our intent, and exactly what they found, that the rich could only buy the seat. You got to get rich in order to run for the United States Senate. Not 8.5 million, it'll take you 10 to 12 million now. In South Carolina, look at the money they had to raise out there in California. You spending all your time. We used to have a junior senator just at 12 o'clock on February the 22nd read Washington's farewell address. Now we've merged Lincoln's birthday with Washington's birthday, and we take 10 days off to go to California to raise money. We take a break with St. Patrick's Day to raise money. At Easter, at Memorial Day, 4th of July, they won't go into parades. They go into, by gosh, raise money. The same with Labor Day, and the month of August is gone, and Columbus Day they have a break, and they're always raising money. I know, because I was up there 38 years, and I would put in a little resolution, concurrent resolution, a joint resolution to amend the Constitution. The Congress is hereby authorized to regulate or control spending in federal elections. And that's all it is. I got a majority vote, bipartisan vote, a couple of times, but the Republicans moved in on it, and Grover Norquist and George Will and everybody else want the rich to buy the office.
Well, in reality, Senator, money's on both sides, and the Democrats are raising money at a faster pace, right?
Let's go back to, we controlled it by the number of registered voters, so much per registered voters. Obviously in California it's way more than in South Carolina. And we had about 386,000, Strom Thurmond and I. And now it takes about 4 to 5 million. You know, if I were there as a senator, I'd vote for that, but not 10 or 12 million for South Carolina. I mean, there's no way. You're spending all your time, and that lets the lobbyists control. The lobbyists are in charge. They said Harry Reid can get them. Lyndon Johnson, if he was a majority leader, could not control the United States Senate. I used to call the leader's office when I was trying to go to the gym at 5:45 or 6 o'clock to find out whether they had a vote, whether I had an hour to undress and work out and dress back. And you don't call the leader's office to find out. You call K Street, and a friend who's a lobbyist down there, he'll tell you when you're going to have the vote, and he can tell you the outcome before you have the vote. He's got a head count with his fellow lobbyists down there. Washington's run by K Street, money runs the Congress. Everybody's playing defense, including Barack Obama. He hadn't led, he hadn't paid any bill.
Well, let me
He's playing defense too and playing re-election. He's a wonderful candidate, but he refuses to govern.
Well, a number of your columns, let's jump to President Obama's leadership style. I pulled just some of the headlines on your columns just to get a flavor of what you're writing about these days. And you, in fact, are pretty tough on the president. You're suggesting that he needs to basically take action here. And let me go to a column I pulled from New York Times yesterday. This is David Brooks, the columnist there. And he writes about presidential leadership style. And here's what he says. As president, Obama has proved to be a very good Senate majority leader, convening committees to do the work and intervening at the end. All his life, Obama has worked in non-hierarchical institutions, community groups, universities, and legislatures. So maybe it's natural that he has a non-hierarchical style. He tends to see the issues from several vantage points all at once. So maybe it's natural that he favors a process that involves negotiating and fudging between different points of view. That's David Brooks. What are you seeing when you see President Obama?
David Brooks full of prunes. He doesn't know what he's talking about. K Street, the lobbyists run it. He doesn't just appoint the majority leader, appoints the committee and intervenes at the end. He doesn't intervene. They tell him what they're going to do.
You think President Obama is being told what to do?
Oh, I hope so, but I hope we can tell him what to do because he's had no experience. I helped with a fundraiser in Chicago when we first elected Obama. I'm for him. I think he's smart and he's very capable and he's genuine. He's sincere. He's wanting to do a good job, but he's told by Axelrod, get out and do this, get out, campaign, 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 and that's all you got to do. And there's been no paying of the bill, and he got a Republican Secretary of Defense, and he was elected to get rid of wars. Now we got a war in Iraq, we got a war in Afghanistan, we got a war in Libya, we got a war in Pakistan, we got drones in Yemen. We got 5 wars going on. I mean, give me a break. And excuse me, and he goes along, I put in a bill to pay for Iraq, 2% VAT to pay for Iraq in January 2003. We went in March the 19th, I think it was, 2003. And Callio, who worked for President Bush, DOA, dead on arrival. So everybody says, wait a minute, I don't want to have to explain this in the next election, put my name on it if it's not going anywhere. So Obama has mimicked Bush. He hadn't paid for tax cuts, he's given them. He hadn't paid for the wars. On prescription drugs, I voted against it because there was no provision for the $500 million to pay for the prescription drugs. You don't want to cut prescription drugs in order to provide prescription. Cut spending now. You got to pay for it, and taxes. But the public doesn't understand that, and they're getting a free ride. And as long as the pressure has not gotten, this is C-SPAN, and you're the first person that's ever read Huffington Post, as far as I'm concerned. Thank the Lord, because if we get out and the public really understands that they're playing games to get the money and out fundraising all the time, they'll pass a constitutional amendment. When I put it up to do it at the federal level, the governor's conference in the 80s, they called me and said, include the states. And so I included the states, and Howell Heflin and I had it, and then Arlen Specter and I had it. It was bipartisan.
A lot of the themes you're striking here are sounding like they resonate with the themes coming out of the Tea Party.
Yeah, but y'all are making too much to do about the Tea Party and not about the situation. I could be described as a member of the Tea Party. I'm very much for Obama. I would, considering those who are in the Republican ranks running against him now, and we had an election this afternoon, I'd vote for Obama. But I'm disappointed and disgusted that they're not doing anything. And they're playing games, and he's out fundraising and tells his Vice President Biden, if he's not treating it seriously, why should me in the Congress, as a House member or senator, get serious about the blooming thing?
If you had his ear today, if you could pick up the phone and talk to the president, what would your one message be? One
message is, you're favoring getting rid of jobs. You're giving a tax benefit to offshore investment in production and jobs. Give a tax benefit to onshore, to create jobs here in the United States. That's all you're talking about. He was out yesterday afternoon. We got to create, we got to get to manufacturing. We got to. He's not for manufacturing. He's for manufacturing in China. He's given a tax benefit. You don't get a tax benefit, so business follows where they get a tax benefit. And so I'd give the tax benefit by canceling the corporate tax. They're not paying any. And GE and all the rest of them not paying. And they're not paying anything for Chinese production, so why have them pay anything for U.S. production? Just put in 6% VAT. Last year, 2010, the corporate tax brought in $194.1 billion. A 6% VAT for last year would have brought in $700 billion. so you can give the hungry poor exemptions for health and housing and food, but 70 billion, let's say, you still got 630 billion to pay down the debt. And now, don't give me any long-range plan, don't give me any closing loopholes. Every time the Senate Finance Committee meets to close loopholes, they close few, but the lobbyists open up others. And we have a loss of revenue. Long-range plans, we had that in Graham-Rudman Hollings. And that's for further Congresses to do the cutting. It doesn't happen. And so don't give me long-range plans, let's do it. And how do you do it? You put in a 6% VAT, cancel the corporate tax, and that is cutting taxes. You're going from an average of 26, the corporate tax starts at 35%, but the average is 23%. You're going down to 6%. It's self-enforcing. You can get rid of the tax lawyers and lobbyists in downtown Washington. You can start a lot of this control that goes on in K Street, and stop it, and then it provides the money to pay down the debt, promotes exports, and it releases $1 trillion in offshore profits. And I'd put provided, however, that they're not given, brought back the $1 trillion to give bonuses, but to invest and create jobs. But that's what they say they want to do. The New York Times has written front page story on begging, let's have amnesty for our $1 trillion in offshore profits. Let's get some onshore profits going. And all you got to do is do what 136 other countries do. They use the VAT here to put U.S. production out of business. We got a windmill plant in Charleston, South Carolina. They've got a 19% VAT in Germany. So Germany manufactures the parts at high cost, so there's no cost or income tax for them to pay in Germany. At high cost, they ship them at 3% cost. They assemble the parts and make windmills at 3% cost, and they 6% subtracted from the 19%. In other words, they can produce windmills 13% cheaper than any domestic production. So the value-added tax is used against us, and we're not saying anything about it. And we're saying it's complicated. Oh, yeah, we don't the tax lawyers don't want to do it. The offshore profit, corporate America, Wall Street, the banking and financial elite, they want to keep those offshore profits flowing. That's why we're into a trade war. And Wall Street, corporate America are the fifth column in the trade war. They're not for the economy. We're trying to rebuild the economy, and they're getting paid not to rebuild the economy. Have you seen anybody that says, let's repeal the tax benefit to get rid of jobs? I mean, the President of the United States, if he was serious, and he's smart, he knows, and you're giving the tax benefit, but do you see him trying to repeal that? They're not serious about jobs. They're not serious about paying the bill.
Well, this is a fairly dispiriting description of what's going on there. So,
oh, hell yeah, I know it. I served 38 years. I was 52 years in government and public office. And as a governor, you learn, and all those governors know, Mark Warner and all, the gang of six, Tom Coburn's good. I mean, he's trying to pay the bill. Dick Durbin, he joined the senior senator. Now, he's one of my favorites. I called him when they were going to run Obama, and I said, by Lord, Dick, if Illinois wants a president, you've been a leader in the House, you're a leader in the United States Senate, you know about defense, you know about the budget and all the issues and everything else like that. Why not? This boy, Obama, he doesn't know where the bathroom is in the Capitol yet. I mean, he hadn't had a chance.
But you like him?
Well, I like him, yeah. I voted for him, and I'll vote for him again if he can do something. But I'm going to ride him to get something done. I can't wake the town and tell the people. I'm glad to see you. Thank you, thank you.
With this frustration about how things work, which all comes back to money and influence and power, as you've described, what do you see as a catalyst for change? This looks like a trajectory that's going in the wrong direction.
The free press is no longer reporting the news. They report, you got to do something about entitlements. Medicare has got a surplus until 2024. Social Security has got a surplus in 2036. It's the general government that's broke. It's the walls that we haven't paid for. It's the tax cuts that we haven't paid for. We've had 10 years of cutting taxes and getting reelected. The money, oh, I give you tax cuts, the government's too big, and that's all garbage. It's not whether it's too big or too small, it's whether it's providing for the needs of the nation. And we're not providing for the needs, and we going along, the media has got to start reporting the news. But the free press now is in competition with the media for entertainment. And so it's just headlines, and all the people know is that the Republicans are against taxes and the Democrats are for spending.
So is the problem ultimately the people, that they're not paying enough attention?
They're paying attention, but they can't understand it because they can't get it on any C-SPAN until now. Heavens above, whoopee, you can't get it on cable TV. I tried to get Joe Yarborough, Morning with Joe, Coffee with Joe or something. I can't get him. I tried to get Chris Matthews. He used to work for Monahan in the budget committee before he worked for Tip O'Neill.
So if you've asked to be on their programs to talk about this and they're saying no?
Well, I've sent the information. They haven't invited me to talk on the program. I'd go on, I hadn't left town. My gal's in the Frankie home, she's had Alzheimer's for about 7 years now. And so I like to be with her.
Sure.
But I haven't been back to Washington but twice in 7 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you're still hoping to get people's attention about this.
And I'm going to celebrate tonight and have a good drink with C-SPAN because of you. Y'all are the first to come by.
Well, we are seeing your columns on the internet. We also have seen them in the regular newspapers. So people are reading some of your work, Senator, while you're out here. I think we're just about out of time. I only want to just follow up on one thing, which is about the wars. Because you've talked about the wars as something that we haven't paid for. But what about the objectives in Afghanistan? Are we doing the right thing?
No objective in Afghanistan. Charlie Wilson, you read the book, George Crowell's Charlie Wilson's War. It's the only war that we've won since World War II. And I was on the Senate side, on the Appropriations Committee and the so-called black programs furnishing the money. But I didn't know what was going on. The fundamental to the CIA is need to know, and I didn't have to know what was going on. All I knew it was working. That Charlie was a scoundrel, but he sobered up and everything else like that, and he knew I was giving the money, and he asked to have a lunch before I left in November of 2004. And Charlie's sitting down there, and I'll never forget talking. He said, "You know how we won that war, Fritz?" I said, "How?" He said, "The Afghans don't like foreigners. They hate the Russians and don't like each other." He says the warlords don't trust each other, and the CIA had to pay off the warlords to get anything done. And he's the one that got the Stinger missiles out of Israel, a Jewish state, to go to Pakistan, a Muslim state, to shoot down the helicopters. Now, and we won the war. Now we're begging Russia for helicopters for Afghanistan because Admiral Crowell in 1991, I think, he testified before the Budget Committee that we were offshoring too much defense production. We can't go to war except to call up some ally or friend and say, please send us the equipment so we can go to war. If we enforce the War Production Act like Jack Kennedy did in 1961, it's the War Production Act of 1950, would create millions of jobs, millions of jobs. If we only did what Richard Nixon did in 1971, when our trade deficit was a minuscule of what it is today, we would create, he put in a 10% surcharge on imports. If we put in a 10% surcharge on imports, right away, Obama did, we'd create millions of jobs, but they're not for creating jobs. I mean, y'all are playing the game, and not C-SPAN, thank you for being here, but all the rest of the media is playing the game.
Last question for you. We've talked about watching Washington and being so frustrated. Is there anything you miss about being in the Capitol?
Oh, I miss the camaraderie and everything else like that. Once you get rid of the money, then you'll have the bipartisanship again rather than the partisanship. I'll never forget when I was running this last time in 1998, they had a fundraiser downtown for my opponent. And I was running for re-election, and all the members of the Commerce Committee that I chaired, I always looked out for them. I learned in World War II, you look out for your man, they'll look out for you. And so I looked out for them. But all the Republicans went down to the fundraiser, save Ted Stevens. And I said to myself, well, if they want to get rid of me, I want to get rid of them. And you out collecting money for each other, and that's the partisanship and everything else. We got a money game going on in Washington that the press hadn't taught. We got a trade war going on. Every country in the world is building up the economy, except the United States is emptying it as fast as it can to India, to China, to Mexico, to Vietnam, and everything else like that. I mean, all you got to do is, where's Intel gone? They went first to Ireland to forego the 15% tax on the European Union. Then they went to China. Now they're in Vietnam. And they're using my technical training. We got the skills. They'd say, whoa, there are 2 million jobs out there, but we don't have skills. I'd send them to South Carolina. We got the skills to make Boeing's Dreamliner and automobiles for BMW. We got training skills. Every state's got training skills. And we can train them up in any time, short time and everything else. Like as Washington is the trouble, and they playing a game, and you with C-SPAN exposing it.
Well, thank you very much for giving us your views, watching Washington closely. Is it 89 years old you are now?
I'm 89. At the end of the year, I'll be 90, and I'm lucky. Knock on wood. Here we go.
South Carolina living, but still watching Washington carefully, and thank you for sharing your views with us, Senator.
Thank you a lot, Susan.
Appreciate it.
Good.